Hello, math students, and welcome back to Module 2 called Rational Numbers. This is Lesson 3, and it's called Subtracting Integers and Other Rational Numbers. Subtracting integers and other rational numbers. The goal for today we are going to learn about the rule for subtraction and identifying distance. The question that I want you to think about in this lesson is it possible to use absolute value to find the distance between a number and another number that is not 0? Okay, so there are some things that you need to know for this lesson in order to understand what we're doing. And the first thing that we would like to do is we would like to check to see if these two expressions right here are the same. And so one of the ways that we're going to prove it, it says let's prove it using a number line and the chip model. So we are going to use, let's say, this expression right here on the number line, and we'll use this expression for the chip model, and we'll see what we come up with. So like what we talked about before, whenever you are using a number line to help you, you need to make sure that you always start at 0. So here's 0. I'm starting here, and the first thing that it says is that I have 8 positives. So I'm going to draw my arrow to 8 because I have 8 positives. This arrow represents the 8. Then it says I'm going to take away 12 positives. Well, taking away is the same thing as moving down or back on the number line, so I have to take away 12 of them. So I'm going to start right here, and I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. If I take away 12 of them, I end up right here with an answer of -4. Okay, so now we're going to work on the chip model. And so I will change colors so we can do that. And it says that we have, according to this one, 8 positive chips. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Put positives in there so that we know what they are. Okay, and then it says plus 12 negative chips. 12 negative chips. So let's try 12 negative chips. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. All of these are negatives. And then I remember from what Mrs. Nelson taught us that when you have a positive and a negative together, they create a 0 pair. So 0 pair, 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 and then I'm left with, that's right, 4 negatives. So this answer is exactly the same as this answer. So let's go back to the question. It says, are these the same? 8 minus 12 is equal to 8 plus 12 negatives. So that means that they are exactly the same. Okay? So what we learned by doing this is that when you subtract, it is exactly the same as adding the opposite of the number. Okay? Let me say that again. Subtraction is exactly the same as adding the opposite of the number. Okay? So subtraction is the same as adding the opposite. So what is the rule for subtraction? Subtraction is the same as adding the opposite. And so now let's take a look at it. Okay? So it means that when you are subtracting something, you take a look at the sign that is subtracting. That subtracting becomes add, and then the opposite of the number that you were subtracting. So instead of being -4 minus -8, what I would do is I would take this and I would make it an addition, but in order to make it addition, this has to go to the opposite. This is a -8, so the opposite of -8 is 8. And so now I have -4 plus 8. Okay? And that's what you do. On this one, this is just showing what happened. Notice that we have -4, okay, is right there. The subtraction becomes addition, which is right here. And then the opposite of -8 is 8, which is right here. Okay? And so that shows you the process, that subtraction is the exact same as adding the opposite. Okay? And boys and girls, it's really, really important that you understand what this means, because in your future math problems that you're going to come up against, it's a lot easier to add negatives than it is to subtract sometimes. So it's very important that you remember this rule. Okay? So let's try another thing that we need to be aware of. And the next thing that we have to be aware of is distance. Okay? Distance is the amount of space between two numbers. You can either count the spaces to determine the distance, or you can subtract the two numbers and take the absolute value. Okay? So an example of this, if we had on our number line, and we know 0 is here, -2 is here, -8 is here. So what we just said is the amount of space between two numbers. So this number is here, and this number is here. The amount of space is what's in between them. It says you can either count the spaces to determine the distance, or you can subtract the two numbers and take the absolute value. Well, on this example, it's really easy to count, because you would just say, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the answer to this would be 6. Okay? That's the distance. So the distance between these two right here, distance equals 6 hops. Okay? And what they're also saying that you could do if you're not going to count them is you can subtract the two numbers and take the absolute value. So you're going to take -8 minus a -2, right? And so you have to find the difference between the two, and you end up with a -6, right? But then you have to take the absolute value of that, which equals 6 hops. Okay? And so that's what you need to look at for figuring those out when you're subtracting the difference. Okay? And the way we proved it over here is you could just take our rule of subtraction means the same as adding the opposite. So if we have -8 minus a -2, let's do that. So we would have this becomes a plus, right? The opposite of -2 is 2. So we have -8 plus 2. So again, if you used a number line to help you show this, here's 0, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Here's -8, because that's what I have. So go to -8 and then add 2. 1, 2. That puts me at -6. And then it says you have to take the absolute value of that. So the absolute value of 6 is 6, because it's 6 hops away from 0. Okay? So either way, you can figure it out. The reason why they want you to know the two different ways of finding distance is because what if you had 425 and -2? Are you going to want to draw all of those spaces and then count them? Probably not. It would be easier to take 425 and minus a -2, and that would give you the distance. Okay? And so it's really important that you know how to do both. Let's look at this one. The amount of space between the two numbers. So we're going to subtract the two numbers. So if the number is 13 and we're subtracting a -3, remember what we learned. Subtraction is the same as adding the opposite. What is the opposite of -3? Is 3. So 13 plus 3 equals 16 hops. So that means that the distance between 13 and -3 is 16 hops. Let's double check and see on the number line. So 0 is here. It says I'm supposed to go to 13 first. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Here's 13, right? Then it says that I'm taking away 3 negatives. Taking away 3 negatives. Well, you can't take away something that's not there, so we remember the rule that subtraction is adding the opposite. So I'm actually going here, and that means that there is a distance of 16 hops. Okay? Another way to visualize it is if you take -1, -2, -3, and -3 sits here. So here's -3. Here is 13. How many spaces are in between there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. What is the space in between here? 16 hops. So that's another way to prove it, okay? So again, showing the distance between the two by counting them or by doing the math, either way, okay? Again, doing the math, we showed it on here, is that you have 13. Subtraction is the same as adding the opposite, which is 3. So we would have 13 plus 3, and that equals 16 hops, like we've proven. So as you can see, we've shown many different ways that you can do subtraction and finding the distance. So now let's go back to our goal and see if we've got it. Today we are going to learn about the rule for subtraction and identifying distance, which is what we just did. The rule for subtraction is the same as adding the opposite. We did a couple of practice problems on the back of adding the opposite, adding the opposite, adding the opposite, okay? And then finding the distance, you can either count them, put them both on a number line, and then figure out what the distance between them is, or it says that you can subtract the two and then take the absolute value of them, okay? All right, kiddos, that's all I have for you today. Hopefully you will think that subtracting integers is just as easy as adding integers. All right, that's all I have for you today. Talk to you soon. Bye.